Hello and welcome. This is John Bloom of Bloom Consulting, and today we're going to be talking about Microsoft SQL Server reporting services. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is John Bloom with Bloom Consulting. What is SSRS? Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services. Well, this is a tool that's included in the SQL Server install, and it used to be part of the BIDS IDE, which is what you use to create the reports. And now you can find it in the Visual Studio Data Tools application. And essentially you pull data from the database, you can format the data and then deploy the data and then run and schedule the reports at a specific interval and frequency. And then you can have the data exported to a specific format such as PDF, Excel, what have you. After you create the report, you can deploy it to the SSRS Web. And in doing so, there's a web application for reporting services, and you can run the reports ad hoc after you log in with specific credentials. You can also schedule the reports to run at specific intervals, and those reports could be emailed or dropped on the network for future use. So let's go ahead and get started with the reporting services demo. So the first thing we need to do is to go ahead and start our SQL Server. So what we do is we open up the services administrative tool, and we go ahead and select the SQL Server. In this case, we have our SQL Server, and then we have our named instance. I'm going to go ahead and start our named instance. So we'll go ahead and right-click and say Start, and you'll see it boot up here momentarily. Okay, it looks like it started. We'll go ahead and log on to our SQL Server Management Studio, to our named instance. And we'll connect using our NT authentication, which is my Bloom laptop /jbloom. Okay, you can see that we have connected with sufficient credentials, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and expand the databases. And the first thing you'll notice is that we have an AdventureWorks 2012 database. So that's the database we're going to base our report off of. We also have a report server and another one here, report server tempdb. Now those databases are used exclusively for the reporting services web. And we usually don't mess with those tables or views or anything because those are part of the package. However, they are accessible, and you can get in there and monkey around if you choose. I've done that before first of all, you can pull reports from there to monitor the frequency of the reports and see who's running what when. Although it's typically not advised because those tables are active 24 hours a day, and if you're pulling data while it's trying to write or update the table, you could cause some problems. So it is available there, and it is modifiable, but it's not recommended. Okay, so what happens if you want to create a report in Visual Studio? Well, what I have here is called Visual Studio Community 2013 Data Edition. So we'll go ahead and start a new project by clicking on the button. We should be prompted momentarily here. You'll see reporting services, and we'll go ahead and close this out because we're not connected to the Visual Studio Online at the moment. So we'll go ahead and create a reporting server project wizard just as a demo. So we'll call it SSRS Demo 1, and we'll click on the OK, and it will create a directory for the solution. Okay, so what it's doing is creating a project, and you can have all these different types such as analysis service, integration service, reporting service, and then there's the traditional VB.NET and C#.NET. But anyway, we'll go ahead and tab through our wizard. The first thing we like to do is to create a data source. So we'll call it a data source demo. Here you'll see you have a variety of options to choose from. We'll go ahead and click SQL Server, click Edit. If you click on this button here, it'll take a minute for it to go out and query the entire network. So in order to make it simple, we'll go ahead and copy our database, and we'll go back here and we'll just plug that in. So that's our named instance database. You click on here and you'll see that's our AdventureWorks 2012 database we just saw a minute ago. We'll test the connection. Sure enough, we have access. We'll go ahead and click the OK button, And now we have what's known as a connection data source. We'll click the next button. Here you have the option of building a query. So we'll click on that button, and what it'll do, it's kind of like the easy way of creating the SQL under the covers. So in this case, we'll click on the add, and as you can see, there's a bunch of tables to choose from, and we'll go ahead and just select the sales order details. And there's the table that shows up in this grid, and what I'll do is I'll say close, and from here you can select on the specific fields that you like to show in your report. And as you can see, our database table, which is comprised of fields, and the fields have types, we'll go ahead and select on unit price, unit discount price, the product ID, the order quantity, and the tracking number. So that's a simple query. We'll go ahead and select that, and then you can actually run the query. It'll go out, and you'll see it's pulling back a bunch of data. It looks like 28, 30, 35, 40,000 records, and that's fine. So we'll go ahead and click the stop button and click the OK. Now we have our connection. We have our query to the database. We'll click the next button. You have the two options. You have the tabular and the matrix. Typically, I use the tabular. There are instances where I've used the matrix for more of a dynamic. You just add the fields, and it builds the grid dynamically, so it's pretty cool. But in this case, we'll choose the tabular. We'll click next. From here, we have a list of fields available on the left. We'll go ahead and add those to our details. But actually, I'm going to go ahead and remove this sucker, product ID, and I'm going to add that to the group. So what it'll do, it'll create a group on every product ID, and then we'll go ahead and add the rest of the fields here and the tracking number. Click next, and what it's doing here is the table layout. Step is fine. We'll include the subtotals, and that's good enough. This is the format of the background. We'll click the slate. It's good. The reporting server version, it is 2008 R2 or later. The reporting server happens to be something else. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for just a moment. Okay, what it's doing here, it's prompting for the report server. And the report server is what's connected to that database we showed you earlier. And obviously, the report server, it has to be running. So you say, oh, if I need to have a service running, maybe I should go to the services option and click the start button. Well, that's fine. However, in the newer version of the SQL Server reporting services, we actually have a utility built specifically for that, and it's called Reporting Services Configuration Connection. So we'll go ahead and click on the Connect button. And what it does, it opens a window, and we'll size it here properly for viewing pleasure. Like so. And that's as small as we're going to get it. So what you see here is a bunch of information regarding the web server, and it's already been configured, and it runs on the service account. And what we're actually looking for is on this web server's URL. And this here is the actual URL that's prompted. Now the thing about it is I have not added my user to the web server. So if I was to log on to this particular URL, you'll notice that it throws an error. I'm not going to go ahead and do it, but trust me. So the trick around it is you go into your start menu and you find your Internet Explorer and you right click and you say run as administrator. And that's how you're able to get around no users added to the database. Okay, so basically it turns out that when you log into Internet Explorer using the admin, this is the actual URL that it's pointing to. And the way that I found that was going to the report manager URL and then right there. So that's how I was able to log on using this. So from here, you can see this is the SQL Server Reporting Services homepage. And what we have are ability to create new data sources, new folders, folder settings, upload file. We also have the site settings here. And what that does allows you to customize the name of your SQL Server Reporting Services. You have security where you can add users to groups and roles. And then you have schedules. So from the web service URL, you'll see this URL here. And we're actually going to use that and plug that into our thing here. And the deployment folder is going to be called SSRS Demo 1. We'll go ahead and click Next. We'll call the report name Report Demo 1. And we'll go ahead and say Finish, and we'll let it do its thing. So it's off and running, and we'll hope for the best. Okay, and what did it do? Well, it went ahead and opened the project to the specific folder, And what we have here are reports, and this is the report that we just created using the wizard. And if we were to click on it, you'll see that it has a data set over here, and that data set we can right click and say properties, and what that'll do, it'll tell us the name of our data source, it'll tell us the name of our fields, any options that we selected, filters, and our parameters. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click the preview button, and what it's doing, it's actually running the RDL, which is the SSRS report, which is going against the SQL Server database. It's pulling the query that we created using the wizard, and it's pulling the data, and it's going to render that data back onto the screen here in the Visual Studio Data Tools editor, the IDE. So what it's doing now, it's actually making a call to the SQL Server database using NT authentication, and it's pulling the data. And there it is. So it actually pulled the data, and we have multiple pages. You click on the last page, and you'll see there's 2,384 pages. So that's a very big report, and typically you don't want to have a report of that size on the web. It takes a while to run and could slow things down, but that's what we did. So that's nice. And if we were to look more at the report, we'll see that the carrier tracking numbers there, the quantity ordered, and it actually went ahead and created these groups. So that's nice. So the product ID is 707, and here's the unit price summed up, and that's wonderful. So that's what we have. And from here, what you can do is you can right click and then say properties, and you'll see that it actually filled in the target server URL, which means that there's a possibility that it already deployed our report to the web, but we'll go ahead and take a look. And I don't believe it did. So the next step is to go back to our IDE and say deploy. And what it's doing is going to build up the components, and we got an error because John Bloom has insufficient rights for performing this operation. So the way I got around that was I closed out the Visual Studio 2013 and I reran it as the administrator, because there's always a solution to every problem. So according to this, it says deploying report demo. Now, the other thing is we can go to our website that's running the SQL Server reporting services, and we'll see if it created our report on the web server. So what we'll do is we'll close out this information, because as every developer knows, Google is your friend. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click on the refresh button, and we'll hope for the best. Click on the home button, and guess what? There's our folder. We'll click on the folder, we'll click on the report, and what it's doing, the report actually resides on the web server. What that means is that the RDL is actually encapsulated within the database that we showed you on SQL Server reporting services. So the components that comprise that RDL file, which is simply a bunch of XML, it sits in the report server database, and there it is. So we saw how we created the project, we created the connection, we created the data source, the data set, and we ran the report in the ID, we uploaded the report to the web, and we ran it. So that's basically what happened. So that basically concludes our demo for reporting services. Again, my name is John Bloom from Bloom Consulting. You can find me on Twitter at SQL John, my blog, and my LinkedIn profile. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope you got something out of this and learned what reporting services and SQL Server does and how to deploy the report to the web server. And I hope you find it beneficial, and thanks for watching.